I think the very first time I came across the ocean, I came actually to Toronto. And I played a party called Winter Galactic. It was a big rave at the docks. I barely spoke English. This girl comes up to me after my show and she's like, "You're sick." I'm like, "What do you mean I'm sick?" I thought she was insulting me, like, "You're sick." So that was my first memory of playing in Toronto.
And Toronto musically in general is on fire. There's so much talent in the scene and there's so much history here. It's not a surprise to me at all that the talent coming out of here is world class.
No, this is the hub, and this is where the new music is, and this is where we party a little bit harder than we should.
The great thing about Toronto is there's so many cultures here, so like you always get the weirdest mixes of people, and it's just great. Everything does well here. I mean, just EDM does well.
Toronto's just down. Chicago's down, our hometown. When we tell them to do anything, they're like, but like that doesn't happen every place we play. Whatever we say, they're like, all right, cool. Take your shirt off. It's whatever.
It seems like Canada always is like ahead of the curve than the States a lot of times with stuff too. Like we always come here first whenever like things are happening, and they seem more open and accepting to whatever is going on.
I love Toronto. Amazing crowd, hands in the air, you know, screaming, jumping, dancing. Amazing weather. Everybody's happy. School ended. Good energy all around.
There was a reason why we selected Toronto. We were always given a choice of which city to sort of highlight with those compilations, and back then it wasn't even a question. Toronto was the place to be. Things haven't really changed much since then. They've just gotten bigger, and it's great to see so many people coming out for an event like this.
My name's Ryan Kruger. I'm the Managing Director of Electronic Nation Canada. My history in electronic music, it is very long. I'm not sure if that just makes me old or crazy. I started throwing parties in 1991 because I didn't want to be a busboy at the keg. Digital Dreams is literally something that I've been trying to make happen in this city for a very long time. The goal was always to create something big that rivaled what happens in Europe or what happens now in the US. We want to be no different than Miami or New York City or any other city in North America when it comes to the dance music world. In fact, we want to be the best. We've now created the largest EDM festival in the history of Canada. The very first festival that I've thrown probably in at least a decade that's sold out. Be prepared to have a great time. Be prepared to be up and on your feet for a long period of time. Dress comfortably. Bring your wallet.
I just got here. I'm backstage. It sounds loud and it's packed and sold out, which is all I need to know. I usually come here like 3-4 times a year for Adam Gill and their production company. I love working with those guys. They're promoters that you can actually talk to and hang out with and have dinner with, rather than the anonymous relationship with promoters that I usually have.
It's Adam Gill from Embrace. I run Embrace here in Toronto. Embrace started about 10 years ago. We're one of the top promoters in North America. We do about 500 shows a year. Everything from the top electronic guys, from Tiesto to Skrillex to Porter Robinson to some of the biggest bands. We also manage artists like Zed's Dead and Art Department. And we own venues like the Hoxton.
Cut to a shot of the Hoxton right now. Wow, it gets so live in there.
The scene hasn't changed that much, in my opinion. A lot less than you would think, because the whole EDM bubble is so fashionable now. But the main difference is that EDM has just become more commercial. There's more EDM in top 40. There's definitely a new wave of kids, and there's a new wave of artists that have come in the last couple of years. Refreshing to see.
I think it's turned into more of a mosh pit now. There's a little less focus on dancing, and everybody's crowding to the front, and it's a lot of pogoing or hands in the air kind of stuff. Whereas 10 years ago, for sure, you knew who the good dancers were in the scene. And people talked about it. They were like, oh, Johnny X, that guy can tear it up. You gotta see him dance. And you go to the club and you'd enjoy watching these characters.
I think they're coming back, actually.
The few and far between. It is coming back a little bit.
They're wearing more neon.
The neon's back.
Glow sticks.
A problem that Toronto has and is notorious for, and you go to cities around the world, Toronto seems to close down especially early, and that includes our liquor laws, and that means that most clubs in Toronto shut down at 2 o'clock. The nature of electronic music is to go a little bit later, and something that's helped us succeed is to be able to provide that after hours location. Clubbers, partiers, when they're not ready to go home, they know that they can find a place at Footwork. We go till 5 or 6 in the morning most weekends. What we're offering is something that we feel is a little more fine-tuned, a little more sophisticated, and people come here to hear a DJ do their thing. House music had a pretty solid base in the 90s rave scene, and there was 10, 15,000 person parties going on.
Back in the 90s, there was a lot of empty buildings in Toronto, literally an empty warehouse on every single street corner. Venue owners would literally rent you their warehouse for enough money so they could pay to heat the place over the course of the winter.
The scene was really big back then. You know, Electric Circus had its show, Dance Nation was every Saturday morning at like 11 a.m.
It looks like, you know, Sesame Street when they play like funky groovy stuff.
You know, as the condo boom happened and real estate became much more expensive, that whole side of things sort of died out. You know, it went into the nightclubs, the scene got smaller for a little while.
And then the first crew that I was aware of that really brought a bit of that rave culture into a nightclub setting was Industry Nightclub. They really set a standard that most people in the city are still waiting for it to be matched. It was just an amazing room. The timing was right. The scene was really free. It was a combination of gay, straight, gangster, rave dancer, all combined into one that had this energy in the room. There was a lot of different people and different cultures and people from different places, but it all made sense. And the music was, I guess, sort of the language for everybody there.
Art department it's an interesting story. It's Kenny Glasgow and Johnny White, who are both Toronto legends in their own right. Kenny's been, you know, one of the first DJs in the rave scene here, was the resident at Industry.
Kenny Glasgow has been a very good friend of mine, almost since day one of the rave scene in Toronto.
Kenny Glasgow used to live in my house. He practiced all the time. That guy wakes up with a smile on his face every day.
He's truly a living legend for Toronto, art department or no art department. And I don't think there's anybody from that era that would argue that.
Our history.
It's a long history.
It's long. It's long for me. It's longer for this old.
Johnny was involved in the scene, involved in promotions, and got into the DJ end of it. Him and his crew had this sound that was very different from what was going on in Toronto. A slower tempo, kind of a deeper feel. And Toronto's kind of famous for always liking it a little bit harder. And these guys were coming in and trying to slow everything down, and they played at the club a few times, but it was never really selling the way we needed it to as a club. And the amazing part of the story is, you know, he probably easily could have turned up the BPMs or played a little bit harder or switched it up to fit in a little bit more to what was, you know, being booked in Toronto at the time. He just kind of stuck with it, and he ended up partnering with Kenny on a project for Damien Lazarus, I think it was. And they just came up with this name for this remix that they did called Art Department, and it just was a smash hit.
Everything started when I met him, and right now we have a great union and everything is amazing with us together.
Toronto's had one of the best electronic scenes forever, but it's cool to see the amount of artists from Toronto, you know, who've taken the international stage in the electronic space. People like Deadmau5 or Mastercraft or, you know, Zed's Dead. There's a big list of artists from here, so it's cool to see that the artists and the people involved here are you know, making a big impact globally.
I think what happened is, like, the 90s were so popular here and everybody was right into it, and it was such a real lively scene. And then it kind of got a little bit quieter in the mid-2000s a little bit, and a lot of these guys that grew up on it were kind of learning their skills in the studio. And by the time 2008, 2009 came around, it was all starting to come together, and they were having some real finished products to present. And it's not a surprise to me at all that the talent coming out of here is world class.
Electronic music is headed in a really nice direction. Recently, attending the Giant Digital Dreams Festival with my girlfriend, we were both like just really happy to see the numbers, the way the people were dressed, no violence, good vibes. I see a bright future for the music and just for the advancement of the scene. It looks good to me.